Talk about a game-changing player.
You don't know who Steve Smith is. By the end of this, you don't know who he is.
All the way for a touchdown.
When you're thinking of a Carolina Panther, Steve Smith usually comes to mind. Over his 16-year career, he had over 1,000 catches, 14,000 yards, along with 81 touchdowns. The former All-Pro and 5-time Pro Bowler had won the Triple Crown, which is when he led the NFL in 3 major categories: catches, touchdowns, and receiving yards. Known for his personality and ferocious attitude,
If you see this face, that means I score.
And he's got it. Touchdown, Carolina.
Smith brought much needed energy to the NFL and the Panthers organization. How did Steve Smith become one of the greatest receivers in NFL history? Smith was born in Los Angeles, California. Growing up, he was one of the youngest, so he always had to defend himself. He grew up in a tough environment, and that was the reason why he played with so much aggression. Although Smith was an All-Metro League selection, he still had to go the JUCO route because of his small stature. Smith attended Santa Monica for 2 years, but there was also another future NFL receiver there, Chad Johnson. After completing 2 years at Santa Monica College, Smith transferred to the University of Utah, where he quickly established himself as a standout receiver. At Utah, Smith set a record for yards per catch with a 20.6 average. In his first season with the team, he ranked 4th in the NCAA in both punt return yards and yards per return. However, he missed their bowl game in his final season due to an injury. After the Blue-Gray All-Star game, Smith began to receive attention from various NFL scouts. He was also named Offensive MVP of the East-West Shrine Game. Smith finished his time at Utah with 78 receptions for over 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns, with another 1,300 return yards and 4 touchdowns on special teams. Smith has shown he could be a good receiver and returner in college at a high level, but he was still drafted in the 3rd round by the Carolina Panthers. If he was drafted during today's time, there's no doubt in my mind he would have gone earlier, but the NFL was skeptical of his small stature and character as he was only listed at 5'9". The Panthers selecting Steve Smith would end up being a great decision by this organization. He made an impact as soon as he stepped on the field. Smith spent the majority of his rookie season as a kick and punt returner. He led all rookies in net yardage with 1,994 yards, which landed him in 4th place behind Priest Holmes, Marshall Faulk, and Derrick Mason. In his first play as a professional, Smith returned the opening kickoff for the first game of the season for a touchdown.
The rookie Smith from his 7-yard line to the 20. Cutting outside 30. There he goes. The rookie on his first touch as a professional, all the way for a touchdown.
Big time. That's big time right there.
Despite his individual success, the team still finished 1-15. During the 2003 season, Smith played a critical role for the Panthers offense. It helped lead them to their first NFC title in franchise history. He finished the regular season with 88 receptions for 1,110 yards and 7 touchdowns. He eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in his career. During the NFC Divisional Playoffs, Smith caught a 69-yard pass and ran it for a touchdown in double overtime to defeat the St. Louis Rams 29-23. He finished that game with 6 catches for 163 yards and a touchdown, but the Panthers would end up losing 32-29 to the New England Patriots. Smith had success early on, but we know what comes with success. During the 2004 season, Smith suffered a broken leg during the first game of the season and was out for the year, but the following year, Smith had finally arrived. In the 2005 season, Smith recovered from his injury to have the best season of his career. He earned his Triple Crown, in which he led the NFL in receptions with 103, receiving yards with 1,563, and receiving touchdowns with 12. Smith dominated the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. In a wild-card victory over the New York Giants, Smith caught 10 passes for 84 yards and a touchdown, and he also rushed for another score. The Panthers then defeated the Chicago Bears in the divisional round, aided by Smith's franchise record of 12 receptions for 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. Smith and the Carolina Panthers then faced the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC Championship. Although he scored on a 59-yard punt return, Smith was held to 33 receiving yards on 5 catches, and the Panthers lost by a score of 34-14. Smith was invited to the Pro Bowl after that season, and he also won NFL Comeback Player of the Year. He would continue to play at a high level, as he signed a 6-year extension worth $45 million. But Smith began to show frustration, as he played with multiple mediocre quarterbacks his whole career. Heading into training camp during the 2008 season, Smith made headlines, and he was involved in an altercation with teammate Ken Lucas. Smith broke Lucas's nose during the fight. and was later sent home for the remainder of the day. But that suspension didn't stop him, as he managed to catch 78 passes for over 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns, leading the NFL in receiving yards per game. The Panthers finished 12-4 that season, but would eventually lose in the playoffs yet again. The next 2 years the Panthers struggled, and so did Steve Smith in 2010, as he finished with the lowest amount of yards in his career besides his rookie season, with 554 receiving yards. The Panthers finished 2-14 that season, so they drafted Cam Newton first overall, and he completely changed the energy around this organization. Newton and Smith developed quite a chemistry, as Smith had over 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. During Week 14, he became the 35th player in NFL history to reach the 10,000-yard receiving mark after a 125-yard performance against the Atlanta Falcons. But the team still had no success, as they missed the playoffs for 2 years. Now heading into the 2014 season, the Carolina Panthers released Smith before that season. That would end up being a huge mistake. Smith went on to sign with the Baltimore Ravens. Steve Smith went on to say that it would be blood and guts everywhere, so bring your goggles. And funny enough, D'Angelo Williams, who was the Panthers running back at the time, actually wore goggles. But there was no laughing matter for Steve Smith, as he was strictly business. He completely made a fool of the Carolina Panthers, as he finished with 139 yards and 2 touchdowns at the age of 35. It's truly one of the best revenge performances in NFL history. He showed he had a lot more left in the tank, as he finished with over 1,000 yards yet again, which is something he's done 8 times in his career. Smith played 2 more years with the Baltimore Ravens, before he eventually retired at the age of 37. You can say what you want about Steve Smith, but he was a guy that talk, but he backed it up every time, and eventually we will see him in the Hall of Fame.